Hello everyone and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Ian Croll and I'm joined by Joe Thomas. Joe, how are things?
Yeah,
we're back again. It's like we've never gone home.
Yeah, we're back again, and just for anybody just wondering, this isn't an emergency podcast. It's where we're going to scramble out because you've heard news. Elephant in the room is the points appeal verdict, isn't it? I think as at this present moment in time, what are we on? Just coming up to lunchtime on the Friday. We've not yet heard anything. There's a chance it could come today. But obviously, with each passing moment, it's not out and we don't hear anything, the greater the chance it gets ended up next week. So that's where we are at the minute.
Yeah, we're also joined by Gav Buckland. Gav, how are things? Joe described you as fresh just before we went on air. What have you been doing differently?
That's because we've not podded since Monday, probably. Yeah, I was okay. Yeah, I was listening to the pod from yesterday this morning. Yeah, all good stuff. Well worth listening to. If nobody's heard it about the appeal. Not the appeal, the 777 takeover decision. And it's well worth listening to. A lot of good points raised by people watching and Joe and yourself.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. So the agenda today, guys, for those watching on YouTube and Facebook, we are live, so just remember to get your questions in, get your comments in, and I will feed them to Joe and Gav, and we'll try our best to get through as many as possible and answer as many as possible. So the agenda, it's mainly about Palace. We have got a massive game on Monday, but we are going to talk about 777 a little bit, and a little bit of the points deduction. We can't not touch on that, obviously, in today's pod. But Joe, I'll start with you. Like I said, it is Palace. We play Monday. Sean Dyche's press conference is a strange Saturday morning. So are you going to be up bright and early to get to Finch Farm?
Yeah, that's it. I'll be at Finch Farm Saturday morning. First Saturday press conference I've known in my 2 years covering the Blues, but I think Gav's already alluded to David Moyes having had a habit of doing that towards the end of his tenure, perhaps when his relations with some parts of the press weren't particularly good. Interesting one. A lot of people have been asking me why it's Saturday, and the honest answer is I don't know. It may be that Everton anticipated there being an appeal verdict in these coming days, and didn't want to end up in a scenario where they might end up clashing with an announcement. That might make sense. Could also be simple things of staff because of half-term holidays, or could be something along the lines of obviously with a Monday game, the players, and I imagine Dyche would have probably had Thursday off, and then they might have overlapping commitments on the Friday. So could be any one of a number of things. But again, just to stress, there is no points deduction appeal verdict yet, but as soon as there is, we will be straight on it with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Gav, just straight to Palace then. How massive is this game on Monday?
Massive, become even more complicated by the events at Palace yesterday, hasn't it? Really, with Roy, and I think you mentioned yourselves. Hope Roy is okay. One of the grand old men of English football, but we're in a state of flux, and they're in a state of flux at the moment on the pitch, at least for them, and that doesn't help. But yeah, it's what are they, 5 points ahead? It's not for the first time. It's a massive game against Palace at Goodison, isn't it? Really, I don't know what your expectations are, but it's a game you can't afford to lose. But it just throws into. I said this on Monday. This is a game that just throws into the nature of the 10-point appeal deductions. That you'd have a different view of if the appeal came out, we got a favourable decision. It puts a slightly different context on Monday's game, but the gap's 5 points, and you've got to live with it. It's a game you've got to win, hasn't it? Simple as. The advantage we've got, really, I suppose, is that it's Monday, and I think everybody else has played by then, and you might have a better insight on what you need to do. But it's a win-win game. End of for me on Monday.
Joe, I remember you saying when Everton had that good run of form, when we won the 4 games in a row, that those games weren't actually, or some of them weren't actually must-win games, because when Everton, in the past, over the past couple of months, when Everton won a game, it was kind of a must-win game. So, is Palace now a must-win game?
It's definitely a must-not-lose game. I think that's the reality, because when we perhaps saw this work against Everton with Luton in the FA Cup, momentum at this stage of the season is so crucial. And one of the many frustrating things about that Luton game was the poor performance from Everton. The fact that Luton snatched a win, and then you saw they then went on a winning spree after it, which took them above Everton in the league. Meanwhile, Everton have kind of continued in this the performances are quite good, and the results are quite good, really. Points against Villa, points against Spurs, point against Fulham. They were all decent results, particularly in the context in which Everton were operating. A threadbare squad with a terrible injury list at the time. And the danger for Everton, I've said this in the past, is that Everton's context, what is good for Everton becomes removed from what is good for staying in the Premier League. So far at the moment, Everton are kind of just clinging on, and they're still in the bottom three, but they're obviously close to Luton. So I think that Palace are coming downwards, aren't they? They're clearly on a negative trajectory. There's clearly a lot of problems there on the pitch, and obviously we know about the issues with Roy, and we wish him the best in relation to that. But this is a real opportunity to set a marker down, to get it within touching distance of another club. If Everton were to win on Monday, they probably come out of the relegation zone. Not only do they probably come out of the relegation zone, they get that big step towards, grabbing onto the coattails of dragging another team into the mess. And we've seen it with Everton over recent years. When you're the team that's on that downward spiral, you look at these games with such trepidation. These are the games you don't want to lose to the ones below you, because it drags you. It just exacerbates all those problems. Palace have got a huge injury list. They've got some wonderful players. There is a unit there that is a big opportunity for someone to take, grab hold of and take forward. The likes of Elise and Eze. They're just fantastic. Mark Guehi as well. But they're all out injured. So this is kind of there's these many different narratives or strands of narrative of the game on Monday. And one of them, and we'll obviously come on to this, is the injuries. It feels like Everton are just starting to come out of their injury problems at a time when Palace are going into theirs. This is a Palace side that for so many reasons is vulnerable. This game is important for so many reasons more than just that 3 points. And as a result of that, they certainly can't lose, and it has to be seen as a huge opportunity for Everton.
Just a reminder, keep getting your questions in on YouTube and Facebook. We are live and there are comments coming in, so we will get to them. But Gav, obviously, we win this game on Monday and we bring Palace firmly into that relegation battle. That's probably there's two incentives, obviously, as Joe mentioned. We win this, we should, move ourselves out of the relegation zone. But, the more teams in that relegation battle you would, perceive to be the better. Palace, as again Joe mentioned, not in a great moment. So we bring that after Goodison, the match at Goodison, we win, we bring them in it.
Absolutely. I said must win game, not because I get Joe's points about must not lose. I mean, it's must not lose and then must win. We're getting to that point in the campaign. What is it, 15 games?
Yeah, about 14 games.
Yeah, you left in the season. Someone got 15. Is you're looking at the games and saying, we need a win there. We need a win there. We need a win there. We're looking at the home games in particular.
This is one of our easier ones.
And I think it's a must-win game because it's one of those games that you look at the end of the season. If we are to stay up, and if we just assume the 10 points it stays at 10 points, and we need to get up to maybe mid-30s, this is a game you've got to win.
Yeah.
And regardless about who Palace are or what their position in the table is, it's a must-win game for me. But I agree with what Joe's saying there. They're sort of, I think they won a couple of games in the last 5 or 6, but the music's not great. They've got, dare I say, they've had a few protesting fans, haven't they, off the pitch. And it's a game that I think we're eminently capable of winning. I shared Joe's sentiments again. I'm trying to think how many, since November, how many games have we played poorly in?
Not many.
Not many. I'd say Wolves away would be one. Luton at home in the FA Cup. And apart
Luton in the Cup.
Yeah, Luton in the Cup, yeah. And apart from that, I'm thinking of, could have got better results, but I can't remember thinking, I'll tell you what, we were rubbish today. No. We've picked up points in games that actually perhaps we were expected to get beaten. Spurs show plenty of character. So we have been remarkably consistent, I think, in the league in terms performance-wise since when was the Bournemouth game? That was October, wasn't it? We won 3-0. We sort of turned the corner then, didn't we?
Yeah.
And so we have got a decent level of performance, which has been very encouraging when you consider the injury list and the fact that we've got a small squad. And I think if we carry on like that, I think this is the type of game that I think we can win. We've been like last Saturday, we've been good at the back.
All valid points, I think, sorry to interrupt. But it's mid-February now, and we haven't won a league game this season.
This year. Yeah. I think I'd be worried if it was this season.
Let me get it right. So this year,
Yeah.
So it's not. And
I know. I'm just trying to flower it up, you know.
No, I'm
And,
not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to suggest it's not a great. It's not a great look, and we are 19th in the form.
And we've not scored a goal in open play in the Premier League since the City game before Christmas. At Christmas, isn't it? No, I get all that. I think what I'm saying is, it's not as if we're on a run of really poor performances, and you think, I fear for us here. We have played at a level that I think you would expect us to play. That's in keeping with the team we've got, and at some point within that, you would hope that we just get a little bit of luck our way. Dare I say a penalty? And so to beat Palace, we don't have them. I think after about 5 minutes of talking, to beat Palace, I don't think we have to elevate our performances over the last 5 or 6 weeks that much. I think there's enough there to show that actually we can win it without really having a massive step change in how we need to play.
It's not only that as well. I mean, obviously they haven't got the win in the Premier League so far this calendar year. They've only lost once, and that was at Man City last weekend. So I mean, and I know that the winless run extends back to Burnley about December the 16th in the league anyway, but they've played Tottenham twice in that run, and they got 1 point, and they probably deserved four. At least 4 from those. They played City twice, and they've given City probably 2 of their harder games, I think, in that run. 71 minutes until City had a shot on target the other day. You can argue that it might have been inevitable. We know the strength of their bench, etc., etc., etc. It's boring. Nobody wanted to think about that game after it happened. I know because I write stories, and nobody wanted to read them because it was just predictable what happened. That it was the obvious thing. But I think it would be harsh to take those elements of the performances and the run away from the context, because this isn't a side. This is a side that's only that hasn't won in 2 months in the league, but that doesn't have the feeling of a side that's gone 2 months without a league win, because actually I think some of the performances have been all right, particularly when you mentioned the context of the injuries, and I think some of the results have been quite good against very good team, and it's just those crucial moments. If Calvert-Lewin scores that goal after he's played through by Danjuma against Aston Villa in the 0-0, it's if Beto heads that in, or they get the penalty off Anthony Robinson against Fulham away. It's if the Dominic Calvert-Lewin doesn't get pulled back against Spurs, and it's 2-1 just after half time, just before Christmas with Spurs. All those moments have kind of gone against Everton. Everton aren't a lucky side, and they deserve some luck, but we can't rely on that. I think, and because we can't rely on that, we have to do what Dyche, one of his many kind of he's had some new phrases recently. I really, really enjoyed last week the description of pressing like crisp bags in the wind if you do it wrong. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then after the game, we had whippers, dippers, and clippers when he was talking to trying to tell his Everton players not to concentrate on scoring trendy goals, but one of his common ones, which we've heard so many times, is control the controllables. And I think that's a kind of a good framework to think about this Crystal Palace game on Monday, because we talk about a relegation battle at the moment. This Palace game, for me, feels very similar to Fulham at home, which they lost and they just didn't show up in at the back end of last season. Well, this is probably going to be one of a handful of opportunities, and these opportunities are running out, to actually put Everton in a position where even with the 10 points deduction, they take themselves out of a relegation battle. If Everton win on Monday and results go for them this weekend, that might not be the case. Luton play at home against Manchester United. They're in form, but we know that Manchester United can be flaky. Forest are at home to West Ham. That could go anyway. But there is a scenario where Everton could win against Crystal Palace, a very winnable game against a team that is, as I say, on a downward spiral, that Everton probably go into that game for favourites. They haven't gone to get many games as favourites over the 2-month period that they haven't won a league game in. But all of a sudden, you could pull yourself out of the relegation zone. You could quite possibly pull yourself ahead of Luton, pull yourself ahead of Nottingham Forest, who will also be looking nervously at whether they're going to get points deductions, how serious that's going to be. Put yourself within 2 points of Palace with a better goal difference. And look, we haven't had the appeal verdict yet on the points deduction. I got no insight to this. But I think if you remove all the arguments about the mitigating circumstances and what caused the deduction, whatever, the fact that they got 10 points and administration's 9 just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, there was no explanation in the report. There may be a sensible explanation behind it, but we haven't seen it yet. And bearing in mind how, I mean, I know we're covering old territory here, but bearing in mind just how severe the impact of a club going into administration is on so many other people inside the football pyramid and outside the football pyramid. The 10 points, the one benchmark we have for a deduction is the 9 points for administration. And I don't think exceeding these rules by nearly £20 million can really fairly be judged, based on what we know anyway, as being worse than that. So say, for instance, I'm almost going into the appeal thinking, surely they get at least 2 points back. Well, they beat Palace, other results go for them, and then say, I don't know, report comes out next Wednesday and they get 2 points back. They're above Palace again. And then all of a sudden you go Brighton away. Brighton, a very difficult game, but anything can happen. There's West Ham at home the weekend after. This is an opportunity here to not just bring someone else into a relegation zone. It's not just get Everton out of the relegation zone. It's an opportunity to take one big step to maybe creating a situation which would be remarkable given the points deduction, even if that is reduced, where Everton could actually move towards a scenario where they don't end up in a really severe relegation battle like they have done in recent years. Now, obviously, even if Everton climb up the table, there's going to be that nervousness around whatever happens with the first appeal. The second case, Everton there will not be a point this season now where Everton can afford to stop winning games and accumulating points. They've just got to get as many as they can to protect themselves as much as possible. But I think that this has to be seen on Monday as a real opportunity to take a massive leap forward this season. And I think one of the worrying things is, I think for everything, for all the wonderful, for all the progress that's clearly been made under Sean Dyche, there have been a couple of times under his tenure where Everton have got on the brink of these, almost taking 2 steps forwards rather than 1 step forward, and they've not taken. I mentioned that Fulham game last year where they could have just removed themselves from trouble, and they didn't. They turned, that's a Fulham side without Mitrovic. Silva was in the stands. They had nothing to play for, and Everton just didn't turn up and got battered. And then you look at things like, obviously it was in the FA Cup, but the Luton game, it felt like a big game from a momentum-wise. It felt like an opportunity to get into the 5th round of the Cup as well and just get another win in the season and just start building something with the home fans as well, because obviously they haven't seen that many wins this season. And again, it was a missed opportunity. Got the tactics wrong, it backfired, got a really damaging defeat. So I just hope that this time they can kind of, they can just grasp onto it and just hopefully there's an opportunity presenting itself here, and I think it would be a real shame if Everton don't take it.
The other one that shows Fulham in the Carabao Cup was a massive opportunity missed, and I don't think we've won since then, have we?
I feel like that's where the momentum just completely stopped. I mean, I know Joe's mentioned, we played the likes of Tottenham, City twice, and we played Villa, all tough games. But I don't think, on one hand, you can say, well, we played all these tough teams, but now we've got Palace coming up, who are like we've already suggested, not in a good space, not in a good place themselves. So I don't think we can have it both ways and go, well, we played our games and we didn't win. Well, now we've got a bit of an easy game, and I think this has got to be a win.
That's
otherwise,
otherwise
it's got to. You're looking at, further down the line where it is must win games against tougher opposition.
This one, I mean, I know Brighton, they're not great at the moment. They were unlucky last week. So you've got Palace at home, Brighton away, where we played well last season, and we held them at Goodison for a long period of time. And then you got West Ham at home, and they're in a massive state of flux as well, aren't they? West Ham, they've not won this year, have they, in the Premier League? So you're looking at those 3 games as a little package of 3 games. Going back to your point, Joe, if you get a couple of wins there and possibly a draw, which they're eminently capable of, all of a sudden, you've got you're going into March, isn't it? You're going into March. You've got a completely different view on things, and so it's not just this Palace game. It's the next 3 games, I think, and then we go to Man United, isn't it? Second week in March, and then that's a massive opportunity. 2 very winnable home games, something away from home we can get something from. If we get 1 win, a couple of draws, 2 wins out of that, you're looking at possibly a different position as we go into March, where the fixtures are a little bit more difficult. We play the derbies in March as well, isn't it? I think the week after the United game.
It's currently due to be in March, but obviously if Liverpool get through to if Liverpool win their next FA Cup game, then it's going to end up either in April or the penultimate or the last week of the season. So
that'd be an interesting one. But I think it's the next 3 games that are important.
How are you looking at it, Gav, in terms? I know we should hopefully find out at least by next week about the points deduction. Is your mindset that we're not getting any points back and we are firmly in a relegation battle?
I think if I was the playing squad and Dyche, I'd be planning for not getting anything back.
Yeah.
I don't think you can plan out. We'll rest somebody today because we think we'll get a couple of points back or whatever. You played like you're 10 points behind, and that's really my feeling as a fan. As I said on the pod on Monday, I think unless there's some massive legal stuff going on, I think and the way the commission went and our evidence. I know there's a lot of stuff come out since then on social media, which is perhaps not necessarily totally 100% correct. My feeling is that we do well to get a couple of points back. The caveat to that is that I still just think we get the set on Monday, we'll get 10 points across both commissions. I think would be my guess. I can't see a position where we get 10 points in this one and then a further points deduction in the second commission. I think that the second commission will be mitigation. We've already had 10 points for largely the same period. And going back to the Tevez thing where he tempered the punishment, didn't it, because it was very late in the campaign. I think that rule should also apply here for the second commission. That they can't make a further points deduction late on, and I think my feeling is that we'll have 10 points either way. And but for Dyche and the playing squad and the board for financial planning purposes, all that type of stuff, we should just assume that it's 10 points and work from there. Anything's a bonus, but 10 points.
Is that where your head's at it as well?
I mean, that's the only way you can approach it.
Yeah.
Like I say, I there are so many arguments, and I have a degree of sympathy for some of the ones that are being made. I have less sympathy for some of the others. I think we've always been clear, and I think we were clear at the time that there have clearly been issues with the way in which Everton's football club has been run, and I think that obviously we know that they admit the breach, so we know a punishment's coming, and there's a sliding scale as to how severe it is. And I think it was really poor of the independent commission not to have explained how they got to 10 points, because that's what's leading to a lot of the uncertainty here. It may well be that their starting point was 5 points, and then they thought that loads of aggravating factors are what lifted up beyond administration. But we don't know that because they didn't tell us. My understanding is that when the verdict does come out, there will be another package. There will be another report like there was with this one, so they will detail their findings. And I think, more than the one lesson that the second commission, the appeal commission, has to learn from the first one is they've got to explain their findings and their reasoning for any decision that they make, because that vacuum of insights is what has led to a lot of the arguments since, a lot of the confusion since, and no one really knowing where they stand. Dyche and his players can only work on the basis that they're on -10. Yeah. For me personally, I still think that it'll probably get reduced in some way. Now, it might just be, I'm probably broadly aligned with Gav on this, where I think that I might, and this is not with any insight, this is just me kind of riffing, essentially, albeit riffing, with a background in the courts and, from previous jobs that I've done here. I wouldn't be surprised if a scenario ended up where Everton eventually just end up with -10. Now, it might be they get some points back now, and they might be suspended, and then the second breach then brings them back into play, things like that. But I don't, I certainly hope they don't end up with more than 10. But I think there'll be a starting point that they'll get some points back, and given how tight it is at the bottom, any point is a massive boost. And given how long it is since they have had a win in the Premier League, any points is a huge bonus. And any points combined with a victory over Palace, I mean, that could be 2 hammer blows to a potential relegation rival that's already on its knees next week. That's it. They go and beat Palace. They go and beat Palace 2 or 3-0. Have Palace sitting there thinking, we are in a scrappy and we're in a mess and we've got to sort things out. And then they go and get 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, whatever back, and they leapfrog them. That completely changes the picture at the bottom end of the table. So, I'm hopeful that there'll be some points that are returned to Everton, even if only temporarily there. I think that, the reality is, though, whatever happens in that with the appeal, because of the second case, there's no point clinging on to the idea that we're going to have any point this season where we think everything's going to be okay. This is even before you get onto the takeover stuff. There's going to be a cloud hanging over Everton. There's going to be uncertainty. We are not going to be able to, and we are not going to be able to trust. Sean Dyche constantly tells me that the only Premier League table that he cares about is the one at the end of the season. And the reality is we might not even be able to trust that one because with the second case, with the Forest case, if either of those end up going to appeal, the backstop date isn't the final day of the Premier League. It's the Premier League AGM, which is a week later. So technically, the table could change after the last ball's kicked. All Everton can do in the meantime is just accumulate enough points, as many points as possible. However many points they accumulate, there's still going to be a nagging doubt in the back of our minds. But if they can take advantage of the situation I think is beginning to present itself on Monday, a big game where the cards for once are falling in Everton's favour, if they can take advantage of that, then what they can do is take a big step to just making the next few months that little bit easier. Or perhaps all of a sudden the potential goes from just staying outside the relegation zone to staying outside the relegation zone by this many points with this many teams beneath them, and that's something that they have to try and take advantage of when it comes their way.
Yeah.
So are you going to say something then, or I thought you were going to?
No, I agree. I agree with Joe. I mean, I think that going on to this, go on about it again, but the second commission, there'd be factors, like dare I say, about the Ukraine, which people said, oh yeah, it was a big thing in the first one. It wasn't really. We had all the sponsorship money in that period at the time the commission was talking about, and it was a very tenuous discussion about this stage in naming rights. But in the second commission, it will impact us because we probably lost about £20 million because of the Ukraine war and our sponsorship for 22-23, which they couldn't do a lot about. And so it won't be the same discussion points in the second commission as will be in the first commission. There'll be another discussion, I think, where we can probably got a bit of a stronger hand about our mitigating factors that wasn't there in the first one, and so that will help, I think. But yeah, we just got to plan on the minus 10 points and take it from there for me.
I think that's probably an important caveat that we probably need to add to our belief or our hope that Everton probably end up with around 10 is the fact that obviously we don't know what's in those Everton accounts, and everything that we know, and a lot of it is out there. It feels very much like the second breach is because of the first breach, essentially. Like, there does seem to be a bit of a potential double counting almost, or, they were in a situation where things were so bad with the first breach, they couldn't get out of them by the second one, I suppose.
Absolutely.
But obviously it all changes if there's something there that we haven't countenanced that completely, undermines Everton's position. Hopefully that isn't the case.
In the second commission, we'll have an argument. Yeah. It's a bit like, I was trying to think of a good analogy here, and there's an analogy in football. It happens a couple of times a season where there's a player, they commit a foul, but the referee plays on. Then they commit another foul, and the referee takes it back and awards a yellow card for the first offence, and then a yellow card for the second offence, and sends them off. And the player says, well, if I known I was going to get a yellow card for the first offence, I wouldn't have gone in so strongly in the second. And we've got that mitigation in the second commission that, when in this year in this period you're talking about, we didn't know how we were going to get treated in the first period. We only knew that after the period had ended. So the second commission looks at the end of up to the end of 22-23. Well, the commission's rule was after that period ended, so we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't change our behaviour, a bit like the player on the pitch. And I think that's a massive arguments in our case in the second one, that we've not been warned. Well, they'll argue that we were warned, but we didn't know how stringent the penalty was for the first commission. When we in this period of the time that we're talking about now for the second commission, if we had known that, we would have behaved differently. And I think that's the thing in our favour in the second commission. I think that wasn't the first time round.
I think the thing is, there's so many permutations that are obviously either going to take place. Today, whether we get an announcement today or next week, it's just insane. But all we can do is go and beat Crystal Palace. So, Gav, just back to Crystal Palace then. Roy Hodgson, the manager, taken ill. This week has cancelled his press conference, and he was rushed to hospital. Surely, I know that we've mentioned again they're not in the best position, but that's going to have a negative impact on them surely as well. Yeah, well, absolutely. But you don't want to. You wouldn't say that's good for us, and you don't want to see Roy ill, do you? No, stuff like negative. You need to point that out. But I think, regardless about Roy's health, if Roy, hopefully he's okay, and if he was, everything all
being equal and he was in charge, he'd be struggling anyway, wouldn't he? Because they have had a couple of results over the last 5 or 6 games, and it goes back at home to a team that's just above us in the Premier League. You've got to win that. If you don't win that, then when it comes to the end of the season, you're looking about 10-point deductions and whether refereeing decisions. If you don't beat a team that's struggling, who are just above you in the Premier League at home, then you're losing any argument that you've got for staying up, haven't you? You really, and this is our view. How view Monday. I think we'll also take encouragement in the 2 FA Cup matches we didn't concede, did we? And we kept it tight at the back against them, and it was Gomez, wasn't it, the goal. A game, you're probably expecting a game like that, aren't you? The 2 games we had in the FA Cup, it's going to be tight.
Depleted as well, or Crystal Palace.
Yeah. And we've certainly got within us to win. They don't necessarily play an expansive game, do they? And it's there to win for us, isn't it? Within our gift.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, a depleted Crystal Palace, but maybe not so much depleted Everton injury latest, because obviously I know we're not going to have further updates until Dyche speaks tomorrow, but we have had a little bit of an update with regards to Doucoure, Ben Godfrey, Danjuma, Gomez, stuff like that. So
yeah, well, that's it. Well, I mean, obviously Doucoure is back there training, so that looks positive news, and we know just how much, can't overstate his importance to this side, of course. Amadou Onana came on last week, and he's had 8 days since by the time we get to Monday, so he should be in a position to start. Ben Godfrey's come out on Instagram and said that he's got over, I think he referred to it as illness, which is why he came off during the second half against City. So they're all positives. I think the big one for me going into this game is Amadou Onana, because I think that I'm really interested to see how he plays, bearing in mind that previously his job in these games has been to shackle or try and shackle Eberechi Eze. Wonderful player. First game against Palace, obviously Everton won, but Eze just caused so many problems. And probably Eze, we saw Haaland at the back end of the game last week get the better of Branthwaite. I actually thought Branthwaite did a really good job on Haaland for most of that game. I thought he was a bit unlucky with the way in which the second goal played out. It looked bad for him when really it was just one of those things. And his rise has been remarkable, and he carried on in a positive trajectory against City, I thought, for most of that game. But other than Haaland, Eze is the one player that I've seen Branthwaite really cause Branthwaite problems. Obviously gave away a penalty in the first game at Selhurst Park, nearly gave away a second one. Eze got booked. Probably touch and go as to whether or not that was a penalty there. Not having Eze running through the heart of Everton, Everton really struggled to stop him coming from the middle. They did in that game. The FA Cup game, Amadou Onana did a really, really good job on Eze. Now he's not going to be purely defensive. He's going to have the opportunity to probably go in both ways. Yeah. He'll be back to full fitness or close to it with the time he's had since he got back. It's an opportunity for him to really take hold of a game. And I think I like Onana. I think he's a really talented player. I think he is probably, I know it's a bit of a cliche, I think he's one of those players that would look a lot better in a side that is better than Everton. I think you could see him moving somewhere for 80-90 million pound in the summer, becoming everyone going, quite pleased with the amount of money that Everton have got there, and then all of a sudden he just turns into a world beater of someone like Arsenal. I think that is probably a relatively likely turn of events. Yeah. I think one of the things that we would like to see him more is perhaps, there haven't been that many games that he's dominated where he's just taken a game by the scruff of the neck and really driven Everton on. And I think this is a game where he's got the chance to, because I think so much of the threat from Palace has been taken out of that side, because Elise's out and because Eze's out, because Doucoure's out. Obviously, this defensive Mark Weahy's out. There is an opportunity for Everton to kind of control the narrative here, for them to be the dominant side, for them to set the tone. Amadou Onana, fresh back from injury, without having to kind of worry about some of the threats that the Palace do have. Yeah, it's a real opportunity for him.
And Doucoure, Gav, mentioned that we haven't won a game in the league this year, but we haven't won a game without Doucoure injured as well. Do you think it seems like Dyche or Doucoure's been running on the grass for like the past 3 or 4 weeks? I know that's not been the case, but anytime there's a press conference, it's like he's back running on the grass. Is this just a case of Dyche making sure Doucoure is back to 100% full fitness, and he hasn't really wanted to, risk him a little bit? Because it has been it's a hamstring injury, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a second hamstring
Yeah.
injury over the Christmas period, wasn't it? So
It's a little bit delicate, those hamstrings.
Didn't we discuss on Monday that there's two types of grass that the player can be on, isn't there? There's training on his own and training with the squad. Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering whether if he'd not played City on Saturday, possibly. But I'd like to see him back on the pitch. We discussed that. So we discussed on Monday his importance. I mean, there's that we talked about his importance under Dyche, but Doucoure stats since he joined the club, isn't it? It apparently going back to Ancelotti's time is our results when Doucoure's not in the squad. You know, since over the 4 years he's been there, are worse when he's away than when he's in the team. Yeah, he's massively important to us. So I like to see him back. And Arna. I thought Anana played well when he came on. I thought he looked really well.
He did.
I
was really same to Chris, who was next to me.
Yeah.
It was really, really notable how desperate he was to have the ball, even in really tight situations where 2 or 3 players were on him. He just wanted the ball all the time. He looked so comfortable on it.
Yeah, I mean, he did look like an £80 million player when he came on, didn't he? I think sometimes playing against a team who are far superior to Everton maybe brings the best out of them on occasions. Yeah, and I think I thought he looked really good. He looked like a Manchester City player when he came on, to be fair. And I think it's important that he's back on the pitch as well, and Doucoure is as well, and Calvert-Lewin obviously looks not a completely different player, but there's less pressure on Calvert-Lewin when Doucoure's on the pitch, isn't it?
Well, just sticking with that then, I'll stick with you. So I was going to say, if Doucoure's in, then obviously that's great, that's what we want. But we just seem to have this debate and ask this question every single week. And it's probably going to continue until Dominic Calvert-Lewin scores a goal. Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Beto. But obviously, I would suggest if Doucoure, is in, then it's Calvert-Lewin for me. But
all day long, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we've shown, that's our sort of most potent sort of front 1 or 2 or front 1.5 possibly. Yeah, you'd have to have those two. It's a system that worked for us before Christmas, and I think that's the system that should remain that way. If Doucoure's fit for the next few games. That being said, you can't let Calvert-Lewin go on a scoreless run for, ad infinitum, can you? At some point, you may want to change it. But for the moment, if Doucoure comes back, you've got to retain Calvert-Lewin. I think it'd be a bit unfair to drop him, considering the amount of extra pressure he's had while that Doucoure's not being in the team as being the focal and lone point of attack that oppositions can just snuff out.
Yeah, well, it's a catch-22 situation, Joe, I think, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we do look, I know Doucoure hasn't played for a couple of weeks, but we look far superior and far better when it's Calvert-Lewin and Doucoure, the top two. We don't know what's going to happen Monday. Doucoure may play, and Calvert-Lewin might score a couple of goals. But how long now do we give Calvert-Lewin a continued run in the team without scoring? If he doesn't score.
I mean, I certainly start him against Palace.
Yeah.
I think that Everton's outlook for the season improves a whole lot if Dominic Calvert-Lewin starts scoring goals again. And the only way of getting him into form or into goal-scoring form, I don't actually think his performance has been that bad, especially when you look at how isolated he's been for so many of these games. And again, we look back on these fixtures, and they say 2 of them were against Spurs, 2 of them were against Man City, 1 of them was against Aston Villa. That's 5 games against 3 of the best defences probably in Europe. So I mean, all at a time when his main support in Doucoure hasn't been available to him, and also at a time where, because of the issues in the centre midfield, the wide players have been jockeyed in and out of position as well as Everton have tried to deal with injury crises. So I think that you persevere with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I just think again you have to take the opportunities to create the conditions for positive momentum to build. And the best thing that could happen, one of the most important good things that could happen to Everton is Dominic Calvert-Lewin starts scoring goals again. And again, talked about how big a win would be next week, how big a win could be with a points, to get a couple of points back. Well, just imagine if we're on Friday here now. Imagine if this time next Friday we're sat here looking ahead to Brighton game, and they've beaten Palace, and they've got 2 points back, and Onana and Doucoure have both started the last game, and Calvert-Lewin has scored and broke that hoodoo. All of those 4 things are very, very plausible.
Yeah.
like, whilst the opportunity's there, just grasp hold of it and just try and create those conditions for, for the momentum to try and sweep Everton forward and take them forward. Because if Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the longer Dominic Calvert-Lewin goes without scoring, the more that issue kind of plays out. He ain't going to score if he's not on the pitch. And I just think he's a superior player to Beto. And I think that he is more central to Everton's hopes this season than Beto. I think Beto can play a role. I think he's still learning the English game. He hasn't had many opportunities. There's a player there who can cause problems, and he's done a reasonable job when he's been asked to deputise for him. But I would definitely stick with Calvert-Lewin on Saturday, and on Monday. Maybe you go, if he really struggles, and he struggles even with Doucoure alongside him, maybe at that point you go, give him a little break for Brighton. Let him go away for a couple of days, have a little bit of a reset, start Beto for Brighton, which is going to be a tough game anyway. Not a game that Everton can't get anything from, but you almost pick and choose your moments. And it's fair to say, as well as, Dominic Calvert-Lewin didn't score in the 5-1 at Brighton last season, but he was probably the most important player in that whole makeup because of how crucial he was to the goal itself. Doucoure's in the first minute and causing problems all the way through. But it was almost pick and choose your moments. So perhaps if you're going to rest him. You could have done this against Man City. Rest him in a game where it's probably less likely that he's going to score, so you don't remove the opportunity for an easy win for him. Create the conditions where you can get an easy win, and it feels like this Palace game is an opportunity for so many easy wins that it'll only take one or two of them to fall Everton's way for all of a sudden the kind of the mood to lift quite dramatically. So
I feel like Joe's manifesting this, all these positive points. It's the more you talk about it, the more it's going to happen. A goal for Calvert-Lewin,
Everton,
a win.
This time next week, Everton 15th, 4 points clear of the relegation zone. Calvert-Lewin's just hit 2.
See what I mean?
All the players are back fit.
Yeah. Joe's doing the team talk on Monday. Just to add to Joe's argument about Calvert-Lewin is, I think I'm right in saying, I think Crystal Palace is his joint favourite club for scoring. Yeah, he scored quite a few goals against Palace. Scored the last 2 home games against Palace, hasn't he? Scored last season. Scored obviously the season before. So as a striker, if I've got like a good record against a team, I don't want to be dropped. No. For any player, you get as long as being watching football, strikers have teams that they for some reason like playing against and always appear to score more and perform better against. And Calvert-Lewin and Crystal Palace is one of them teams for him, I think, and that's another reason to play him on Monday. I'll just be happy to show me stats to Dyche, I think, beforehand.
Okay, 777, Gav.
Yeah.
Me and Joe did a pod yesterday, did a show. You can watch on YouTube, Facebook. You can also listen to it on Apple and Spotify for the Royal Blue podcast. Just your thoughts on really what was like a little update, but also I've read this morning sources suggesting that the Premier League have submitted new questions to 777, which is, as far as I'm concerned, and even more of an update from what me and Joe talked about yesterday. So,
I thought it was a really good pod, by the way. I was listening to this morning when Joe asked me to come in, so I thought, go from one pod to another. And I think I can only add to what was said yesterday. I think the issue for me is people are, saying the Premier League, they've got it in for us, and, throwing it, linking it to the commission and all that type of stuff. I'm not so sure about the chalk and cheese. They're 2 completely different things, aren't they? People want a decision on this, not because they want a change of ownership per se. It's just because the club's finances are such that a decision needs to be made, doesn't it? We're doing the football equivalent of paying the mortgage by your credit card at the moment, aren't we? With them just giving us loans. If Everton were perfectly well run financially and had no issues, and Machiri was okay, there wouldn't be a mad rush to change the ownership, would there? It's because Machiri's being such now an absent landlord, and our finances basically need 777, that people want a decision, don't they? But unfortunately, football doesn't work that way, and because of the nature of the takeover, who the takeover is, who they are, it will take as long as it takes, unfortunately, and there's not a lot we can do about it. But that does damage the club within it. And at the end of the day, I just want the right decision. I don't want the wrong decision that's done quickly, just to appease people. I just want the right decision. The problem with that is how that affects our finances. I said it, I think you said it, is the fact that we didn't sell anybody in January indicates to me that the club's reasonably comfortable with their financials between now and the end of the season. So I take comfort in that. So if that's the case, then if this run was on a little bit more, that shouldn't harm us. But I can see why people want the decision now. But I don't think it's some part of some great Premier League conspiracy to harm us and damage us by delaying the decision. These take time. It's well quoted that the Newcastle one took forever, didn't it? But within that, slightly worrying. And again, stories, whether you trust them or not, is that if they're asking for information, when was the paperwork done? September, was it?
For the agreement.
Yeah.
So
if you're still asking for more paperwork, or 4 or 5 months after the original interest, then that's slightly concerning. Maybe things are not progressing as quickly as what we've been led to believe. And I know the stories this week that we might hear by the end of February, but who knows? But I wouldn't throw this in with the Commission as some sort of Premier League conspiracy. It'll take as long as it takes, unfortunately, and because of the nature of the deal, our financial position, who they are. In retrospect, it was never going to be a Jim Ratcliffe at Man United, was it? Really, never. And we shouldn't compare the two.
Cool. As mentioned, then you can listen to that podcast and watch that podcast on YouTube. Me and Joe sat down yesterday and talked for probably a lot longer than we originally specified to, didn't we? But yeah, it was a good chat. I mean, Joe, we can't really. We've talked about the points deduction a little bit, but do you want to touch it a little bit more? Surely Everton, surely the Premier League aren't going to wait till Monday now, on the day that Everton play to release, the findings and the decision.
I think it would be a real shame if they were to do that. I mean, that would be like I don't think the Premier League have handled this situation particularly well. I don't think they've handled the a lot of this process particularly well, to be perfectly honest. I think if they were to do it on Monday with an Everton game that evening, I think that would just be ridiculous. Like, they have to have some mind to learning from their mistakes about things like timing, and optics does matter, and also just giving Everton a chance. Giving Everton a chance to and fans a chance to process information and things like that. Like, I just think that doing it on a game day would just be cruel. Not cruel. I just think it'd be. I just think it'd be stupid.
It would antagonise.
And I think it'd be irresponsible.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you say it would antagonise. Obviously, they gave Everton 4 or 5 points back. It might galvanise the crowd, but I think these have to be removed from the emotions of a match day. And I also think that the fear is that. Obviously, we're approaching Friday afternoon, and a Monday when everybody associated with Everton's going to be focusing on the game, are both bad times unless you kind of want to bury it, or you want it to only have a limited space in the news cycle. You probably only do that if you thought you were going to get criticised even more for what's going to come out. So, the timing would be quite telling if it ended up being 4 o'clock today, or 12 o'clock on an Everton game day. I just think that. I think the authorities, and I think one of the problems with the Premier League, I think, is that it's having less and less of a view from the fans' perspective. I think you look at everything from kick-off times to late changes to kick-off games to just everything from VAR to everything's kind of working against the matchday fan, and everything's taking the game far further and further away from what makes it so special for so many people. And the Premier League kind of has a responsibility to not exacerbate that where it can. And I think that releasing a report as important as this on Monday would just be, I just think it'd be irresponsible. I think it'd be a poor show. So we'll see. But surely, if it's not today, surely it won't be Monday.
Terry McCormack. Go on, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, at least on Monday as well, it affects Palace as well, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Not just Everton, it's unfair on Palace.
Well, Terry McCormack on YouTube has said it's taken too long to confirm a decision. Is the appeal decision being delayed until after the Palace game to avoid any backlash because of TV coverage? Would he take that into account?
Possibly. Bear in mind the adverse. Yeah, it's on Sky, isn't it? Yeah. Bear in mind, we know what happened in the Man United game, and thereafter. There has been criticism of, rightly or wrongly, of Sky's coverage. I think if you were delivering bad news, you'd probably wait till after the Monday, where we've then got a fortnight to the next home game.
It's a good point from Terry, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
a really fair point.
Bad news for the Premier League or for Everton?
If bad news for Everton, I think. Yeah, if it you wouldn't get deliver bad news on Monday, knowing that there's a game that night on Sky. Bear in mind the criticism that both Sky and the Premier League have had. It wouldn't make sense, really, would it? You would think you would leave it till the day after. But we're just speculating here, aren't we? What we do know is that, appeals, Joe, you've done court cases and stuff. Not easily, you don't just have to hear and then 48 hours later, you've got to think things through, and that takes time. So you would hope that, but sometime by this time next week. They said the general expectation was mid-February, wasn't it? So, but this time next week is sort of getting on to the end of mid-February, if you know what I mean.
Eugene McGeever on YouTube says, I think Everton will win their appeal against Masters on the Premier League this week. I mean, Gav, why would there be a hold-up? Why, in your opinion?
It's not. I don't think there's a hold-up at the moment.
Do you think they know? Do you think they know the decision now?
Who?
The Premier League.
The Premier League or the Commission?
Well, both.
I think the Commission will probably have a rough idea where they're going with it.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think that the lesson that they have to take from the last Commission is that everything has to be belt and braces. They have to make sure that whatever report they release is word perfect, because they've now seen how much scrutiny will be applied to it, so they can't afford to do a rush job on it or anything. I'm not saying they would do it, but I mean, these are very important matters and they take time to conclude, and I'm sure that the panel will be meeting up and talk about things, and they'll be under a lot of pressure, to almost more pressure. The bigger pressure on them is probably less on what their ultimate decision is and more how they deliver it, and whether or not they deliver it in a way that creates grey areas for conspiracy theories to arise and questions to arise and for scrutiny to probe at or not. And I think that it probably take a bit longer because they want to make sure that they just have all areas covered. One
of the reasons why it take longer is because of the vagueness of there was no rationale for the 10 points, was there? There was said Everton, spent too much on players and stuff, but there was no rationale how they got to 10 points. And one of the things I think will add time to the appeal and the wrapping up of the appeal and publishing of the results is the fact that it is addressing a lot of areas that the original decision didn't cover, and I think that hasn't helped. And also as well, this is the first one in the Premier League, isn't it? Really, this is the type of stuff that's used as a template for the future, isn't it? Nottingham Forest to be looking at this type of stuff. So in terms of they're slightly different, but I know what you mean. In terms of, they spoke about in the Commission about setting a precedent, but I think this judgment does set a precedent, doesn't it? And the appeal therefore will reflect that, and I think that's why they'll probably take a lot more care on it than say if there was an appeal on the second commission, because they've got so much new stuff that's not being covered before in this type of decision to do, and I think that's all thrown into the mix in terms of why there's a delay.
Mike Hope on YouTube says they've been quick enough to take the points away, though. Clearly,
that's a separate discussion. Yeah, that's a separate discussion whether the points should be taken away or not. I've not. It goes back to what I said on Monday, doesn't it? That you've got this ridiculous position where we could have 5 different points totals this season. There isn't what we've earned on the pitch. It's minus the 10 points, plus a couple of points back from an appeal. Then that changes again from the second commission, and then that changes again from the second appeal. And it's I think it's more an issue for me of having the 2 commissions in the same year. It just doesn't work.
What is important to bear in mind in that is the Premier League wanted the appeal. The case has already been heard. They wanted that last season. It was the Commission that put it back into the realms of this season. Premier League didn't want to be in a situation where they could potentially have 2 commissions in the same year.
Yeah. But within, because of the timing of the first one, You know, it was March, I think they announced it,
was,
wasn't it? It was never going to be done by the end of the season. And worth remembering here, isn't it? And to be fair, when people said, "Oh, the Commission's got it in for Everton," they rejected the Premier League's arguments about hearing it last year and supported Everton's view that they didn't have enough time to prepare the papers, which is quite right. So when they said, "Oh, the Commission was biased against Everton," I'm not so sure about it, certainly regarding that aspect, but the whole thing is, the two commissions thing is just a little bit of a farce, isn't it, really? And they should, I don't know whether you heard I said before, haven't I, they should just add one commission this year over 4 years, made 140 million threshold, and you just have one exercise. I think the two is just a bit of a joke, isn't it, really? It's what's that thing about comedy, tragedy plus time, and we're getting into that, aren't we? And here it's just gone on so long that we've now gone from the dramatic bit. It's become a little bit of a comedy, hasn't it, really, and a bit of a farce.
I like that.
You know,
that's what I'll title the podcast on.
It is. By the end of the season, it's going to be farcical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It could become absolutely farcical.
Another point is probably worth pointing out, just in relation to that last comment, is winning the appeal doesn't mean that Everton don't get punished. This isn't a case of, this isn't an argument over whether Everton are guilty or not. They accept guilt. Yeah. It's an argument over the severity and, to a certain extent, the nature of the punishment. So, yeah, Everton aren't going to, whatever happens, we're not going to move towards a situation where Everton don't get a punishment. I still, I keep saying this on here, if the Commission comes back in any part of an altered or reduced punishment, includes a transfer ban, includes the summer, I'm not actually sure that would be a win for Everton.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're fast approaching an hour. We obviously just can't get enough speaking about Everton, so we'll just go back to Palace briefly. Joe, we'll do starting lineup and predictions. I'm sure we've all got very similar starting lineup, so if you want to go first, well, obviously injury pending, but you know. I
mean, probably the big question's right back, isn't it? Godfrey's done reasonably well their last few games, but I'd still prefer having a specialist there. I wrote this earlier in the week that I think if Everton had the 10 points and were safe in mid-table, I would be giving Patterson a run because you'd have that safety net to give him the chance in the team, to watch him over a sustained period of time and then work out. Dyche clearly has questions over him. You might be able to kind of work through that with him and give him 10 starts and just make a decision whether or not that's an area that we need to look at in January in the summer transfer window, or whether Patterson looks like he's answering the questions enough that Dyche his answers are strong enough for the questions that Dyche is posing him. I think if Coleman's back fit, I start Coleman. Because obviously he's specialist right back. I remember being struck by how well he played in the FA Cup game at Palace when he came into the side in that match, and obviously his experience is there, and that's crucial. His experience, his maturity, his professionalism, particularly if you're going to take Ashley Young out the side, which is what I would do if Doucoure's back fit, because Doucoure will come back into the middle and Jack Harrison will move to the right for me. And as you've already said, Calvert-Lewin starts, no question.
Prediction then?
2-0 to Everton.
2-0.
And Calvert-Lewin scores one of his goals.
I'll take that. Gav, one thing that we haven't actually touched on is that if Doucoure is fit and available to play, we know Onana's fit, we're going to have a bit of a midfield conundrum, because we know Idrissa Guy has played very well since he's come back. So
good question.
What does he do with that? It's just struck me as to what we actually do, and who drops out if Doucoure comes in.
I think Gay's played really well, hasn't he? Considering I had my doubts when he come back from the AFCON about whether it was too much to play immediately against Spurs, and City's a tough game. It was at fault a little bit for the second goal. I mean, James Garner's the one who probably looks vulnerable there, doesn't he? Really, if you're going on current form and
he's also played a lot, hasn't he? Like, he's one player in that centre midfield that's been fit and available for this whole period of time.
I think that's a fair shout. So between us, I think we're probably saying you play Garner, Gay, and Onana, and Doucoure's back. Yeah.
I think so, but I think Everton's best midfield three is Onana, Garner, and Doucoure. But obviously, it'd be very harsh to drop Guy.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think that Idrissa Gueye has been very good in recent weeks, and you had the added bonus if you get to give James Garner a little bit of a break, because
Maybe.
he is someone that has been absolutely ran to like every single ounce of energy he's got has been used up, because I say he's the one player that's been constantly available throughout all this period. So you know what, taking the opportunity to give him a little bit of a break might not be a bad thing.
Prediction?
Dyche rest and plays. That's a new one, isn't it? Really. Prediction, I was going to go with 2-0 before Joe said 2-0. Yeah, but so I'm still going to go with it. Has a feel of a 2-0 game, doesn't it? Really.
I'll put 3-1 down.
3-1
To Everton.
Yeah, obviously. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I just think we're defensively we're okay at the moment. Maybe possibly against Spurs we were a little bit lax, but over 90 minutes, and Palace didn't pose any sort of threat really over the 2 games in the FA Cup, and they're probably a little bit weaker since then. So I think a clean sheet to add to Jordan's tally hopefully will be good.
Well, my morning reading this morning, Mason and Sutton had predicted that we'd win, so all the pundits are going for Everton.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that tells us more about you than.
Well, you know, morning reading, seeing about Everton. Okay, well, we're in injury time. I think that probably is going to do us, isn't it? Hopefully, an Everton win on Monday. Points deduction scraped off the board, and Everton looking high, wide, and handsome on, up the table. Could be a thing next week.
Mid-table by the West Ham game.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Joe? Anything else you want to?
Be nice that one again.
Anything else you want to say?
No, that's it.
Yeah, cool. All good then, Gav. Thanks very much, Joe. Thanks very much. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.